feel it in my bones, you're about to move. I feel it in the wind, you're about to ride in. You said that you would pour your spirit out. You said that you would fall on sons and daughters. So come. I feel it in my bones, you're about to move. I feel it in the wind, you're about to ride in. You said that you would pour your spirit out. You said that you would fall on sons and daughters. So let the rain come drench us in love. Let your glory rush in like a flood. 'Cause we are fixed on this one thing, to know your goodness, to see your glory, and we're transformed by this one thing, to know your presence, to see your beauty. I can see it now, your kingdom come. I can hear it now, the sounds of heaven. You said that if we ask, we'll receive. So we're asking for the greater measure. So like the rain come drench us in love. Let your power rush in like a flood. 'Cause we are fixed on this one thing, to know your goodness, see your glory, and we're transformed by this one thing, to know your presence, to see your beauty. So come and blow on through, Spirit move. We're ready for you to come and blow on through. Come and do what only you can do. So come and blow on through, Spirit move. We're ready for you to come and blow on through. Come and do what only you can do. 'Cause we are fixed on this one thing, to know your goodness, to see your glory, and we're transformed by this one thing, to know your presence, to see your beauty.
Hi everyone, welcome to episode 3 of Family Heart Talk, where we focus on strengthening faith and well-being. Our topic for today is nurturing affection in families. Now, homes are centers for love and affection, a place where relationships flourish, a safe place for love and affection to grow. Now, in our Asian culture, the open display of affection was taboo. During my time when I was growing up, I don't ever remember seeing my parents holding hands or giving hugs to each other. That was a thing to be ashamed of. You don't do that in front of the children. But now we know that that is nothing to be ashamed of, and it should be encouraged. Now, how do we change that? Today, we're very privileged to have with us three friends who will be sharing with us on how they had been nurtured and how they are now nurturing their families to show affection to one another. Let's welcome our panelists. Hi. Okay, now we have with us Miss Sarah Dorai, who is married, Fabian Joseph, who is not just a husband, but also mentor and greatest friend. Wow, nice. And Dr. Benjamin George, who is
Hello.
the blessed husband of one, I repeat, one wife, and together they have 8 lovely children. He's also the doting grandfather of 2 grandchildren. Yes.
Praise
okay.
God.
Yeah, amen. And brother CB Chia has been happily married to his lovely and vivacious wife, Christine, for 18 years, and they have 6 precious children. Thank you, all of you, for making time to be with us this evening.
Thanks for having us.
Yes,
I'm sure the viewers will benefit from what you have to share with us today. Yeah. Okay, now before we start, I have a warm-up question for our 3 panelists. Okay, now, what are 3 words that come to mind when you hear the word affection in the family?
I think for me, the first 3 things that come to mind is love, care, and safety.
Love, care, and safety. Okay.
For me, fun, laughter, understanding among the members.
Okay.
And for me, it's love, trust, and happiness.
Very good. We are all on the same page, so we should be doing fine. Okay. Now, fun and humor are ingredients for having affectionate families, to build affection in families. Fun and humor are very important ingredients. So, Sarah, would you like to share with us what are some characteristics you intentionally instill in your family to ensure a loving and affectionate environment? Your family, as in your family with your parents and your siblings, as well as family with Fabian.
So I come from a family of 5, including my parents. I have 2 other siblings, an older sister and a younger sister. And we are a very close-knit family growing up. And I think one of the things that we do to, kind of instill a loving and affectionate environment in our family, or something that my parents did rather, is the first thing is to give each other affectionate names. They call my older sister Precious. They call me Blessing, and they called my little sister Lovely. And my dad also actually has an affectionate name for my mom, but I will not be revealing any secrets today. So, you never really hear people call each other in that way. I mean, the word blessing is so uncommon as a name, or even as a pet name or an endearing name. I once shared this story with my tuition teacher, and when I first told her, at home my parents call me Blessing, and she was very confused. She was like, how do they scold you? Like, how do they scold you if your name is Blessing? Well, I tell you how, it's like Blessing. But being called in that manner reminds you of your value to your parents, or who you are to them, that I am a blessing to them, I am lovely to them, I am precious to them. And it really kind of makes you feel very loved. And sometimes subconscious, but as you grow up, you kind of think of the meaning of the word and the meaning of the name and its attribute given to you. It really makes you feel so, so loved. And the other thing is also speaking to each other with respect or respectfully. You know, in my family, they always say, don't speak to each other rudely. You cannot call each other names. I've never once heard my parents speak to each other disrespectfully, despite the disagreements that they may have. I mean, it's among siblings, it's a bit harder because you irritate one another, you annoy one another all the time. That's what siblings do. And at one point, it got really bad because me and my sisters, we were just so worked up at each other. We kept calling each other irritating. Oh, you so irritating! You so irritating! And my dad kept hearing that. He was like, "That's it. I'm banning the word irritating from this house. You cannot say the word irritating," because we did not understand that. By calling the other person irritating, we are attributing that to them, and we don't understand that, yes, the feeling is what you're doing is causing me irritation, but doesn't make the other person irritating. There is such a difference there that as a child you do not see, obviously, but that's what they were trying to teach us. And in all this, where there's so much love in the house, it creates a safe space for family to be together and to know that you're loved. And when you know that you're loved, that's why you can actually be yourself without inhibitions. And then you can make fun of each other, all the time, and you wouldn't take offense because, at the end of the day, you are loved. I never realized how much I am like myself at home with my family until I got married and moved out of the house. My husband and I, we try to come back to my parents' house very often. We are there maybe once in 2 weeks just to spend time with them. And he says, you're not the same at home. When you come to your family's house, you are like this. You come alive. And people who know me, they would say that I'm very loud, but with my family, I'm just like, ah! And it's fine because they love me and that's who I am, and they love me for who I am. And so we're unafraid to laugh and we're unafraid to make fun of each other. And I recall a story when we were younger. I used to, when I was about a toddler, I used to get into this really weird habit of digging my nose, and it was really horrid. And my parents, for some reason, couldn't stop me from doing it. And to kind of hinder me from doing it, they called me Diggy Diggy, so that I would stop doing it because I don't like being called that. And it actually worked. And until this day, they still make fun of it. Okay, it will be at the dinner table, they'll be like Diggy Diggy, But it's all done in good fun and good humor. You kind of just know that they love you no matter what, and you are able to laugh with one another no matter what the circumstance. And I think that is really important, in an affectionate family, and to really harbor that love for each other.
Yeah. Wonderful. And a safe space where there's no inhibition. I like that. And also when you're called, I think that's a good idea, to give these names to your children, because if you're called blessing, in after a while it just grows into you.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, it really does.
Right. How not to feel affectionate and beloved when you're called blessing all the time. Right. Sure. Wonderful. Thank you. Yeah, very good. Do the rest have anything to add to that?
As long as the names are not derogatory.
Yeah, I mean, I can identify with Sarah, speaking loudly. We have 5 siblings, all 1 year apart. When we talk, a neighbor is thinking as though we are quarreling. But when they got to know us, these guys are, oh boy, interesting.
Exactly. In our household, of course, you've got 8 children. And of course, now when you have son-in-laws, daughter-in-laws, and you've got the grandchildren coming, the noise is really loud. So just to talk across from one person to the other, talk across the table was multiple conversations. Yeah, it was really, really interesting.
Yeah, that's how we show appreciation for one another, and that's how we love one another.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, and that is good noise, right? It's good noise.
Yes,
it's noise of laughter and affection and teasing and pulling each other's legs and all. So that's really nice. Yeah. Okay. And then another ingredient is equality. Now, my husband and I have 3 children, and every one of them claim to be our favorite child, right? Dr. Ben, you have 8 children. I can imagine all 8 of them wanting to be your favorite or most favorite child. So with your 8 children at home, in what ways can equality be reflected in the home? And how does that enhance your affection for each other? Now, be careful with your answer. I think your children are watching.
Yes. So let me answer that first. Well, before I get to this one, when you say you have 8 children, all of them looking to be the best son, the most favorite son, most favorite daughter. So one of the things we say, you're favorite for your age group.
That's a good one. That's a good one. Yes.
So anyway, equality is a very difficult topic. And obviously a lot of it comes from our own parenting styles. So that makes a huge difference. But to compound that, we also have what's known as the Oedipus complex, where it's the mother bonds with the son much easier and the father bonds with the daughter. It's the way God has designed it. So daughters learn from their fathers of what they want to see in their husband. Likewise, sons from their mothers, what they would like to have the ideal wife. But there's always this issue of disparity between the boys and the girls. And that is one of the sources. But the other really comes from the way we deal with children. So children are always looking for equality. When they look at equality, we say, what is it they look for? Is it the rewards? Or quite often, actually, it's the punishment. They want to see that the punishment is equal. So I have this story from my mom-in-law in India about her brother and he was, of course, being naturally a boy, was mischievous, and he had the two sisters that were relatively good, one exceptionally good. So when the exceptionally good sister misbehaved for some reason, minor misdemeanor, and she needed to be punished, up he jumped and said, volunteered, severe punishment, because he just couldn't get her into trouble, So the punishment is what in the end they're trying to see whether we are equal in the way we do things. Likewise, when we do rewards, we need to be seen to be rewarding equally from one to the other. And it's important. But when you start with equality, you really, really have to begin with the husband and the wife. And when children see there is a certain equality, not domination by either spouse. And where does it start from? Of course, it starts from the word helper. So when God made Eve, he made a helper for Adam. Taking the scripture, actually there was a whole book that was written on this in the end. The word comes from paraclete. Where does that come from? Holy Spirit. When God gave the comforter to us as humans, when Jesus was leaving, that same image is being given to the wife. So some people say, oh, the wife has become the Holy Spirit, superior being. But actually, that's not the case. It is, as Paul reminds us, wife submits to the husband, and the husband loves the wife. So we start with this whole equality thing. So now, of course, we need to avoid is favoritism. But sometimes when you look at inequality, there is sometimes when you have children who are ill, who need special attention, special care, you need to give it a little bit more. Not favoritism, but we try to avoid. So inequality, equality, there has to be some fairness in the whole system, and that's what we are. And for us, it's really a global family, stretching from Australia to Canada. For some time we are always moving between countries, simply because they're homeschooled. So they were homeschooled, and they do homeschool sometimes while they're sitting in Canada or they're here in Malaysia. So being global, it's also made a difference. We need to be equal across, we need to be communicating with them. And of course, thank God for multimedia. It's made a huge difference to be able to communicate, see pictures, not compared to the good old days of telephone and a few minutes conversation.
Yeah, it's true that it's very hard when we have to give more attention to those who need more attention.
Yes.
Right. Then the rest will look at it and say that why are you giving him more attention? And the naughtier ones will always get the extra punishment, right? So they feel that they're being victimized. Right, when we're growing up, when the good ones get punished, we'll go nah, because they're getting punished. Yeah, that's a good thing.
Well, actually, in my family, funny story. When my older sister used to get punished, after the whole debacle, I would go to her and say, "Daddy's so bad, yeah." And then my dad would hear me say it, and then I'd get punished after that for saying it.
So did you get punished after that?
Yes. Equal punishment.
But of course, talking about that, sometimes when we need to punish, and they've all been naughty, even though one has done the misdeed, all get punished just to make life equal.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, that's true.
My wife would say that sometimes when her sister was naughty, she got punished because she allowed the sister to be naughty. So inequality.
That's what my dad did for all of us. One foul up, all of you get it.
Oops.
That's fairness to him.
Yes.
That's the easiest way to show equality.
Yes.
Okay, I would like to take this time to remind our viewers that we are taking questions from all of you. So if you do have questions related to this topic, please feel free to key in your questions in the comments, and we'll try our best to make some time at the end of this session to answer some of the questions. Okay? Now, all right, so we have got humor and fun, we have equality, and another skill for enhancing family oneness is to support each other in crisis. CB, would you have an incident in your family when you were going through a crisis and affection still shone through?
Yes, Dr. Benjamin, we like you, we also homeschool our children. I would like to share with all of us the crisis we encountered during our homeschool journey. It all started very well, and entering the fifth to 6 years, that's where, in the journey when we had our number 6, she was about 2 then, and then with the increasing workload and some misplaced priorities, my wife started to actually lose her coping mechanism, which inevitably put some strain on our relationship, which actually affected the way we relate to one another. We tried to talk it over, but after a while, it seems not making any headway. Then we seek counsel from our mentor, this couple who also homeschooled their kids, and they have been journeying with us. They knew our situation, and they then advised us to temporarily put on hold our homeschooling and rather focus on building our relationship between me and my wife. So we took their advice and opted for some options that they actually explore with us. We actually then decided to send the 5 kids to a learning center, leaving the youngest at home with my parents, who actually came up to assist us. Having made the decision, we gathered the children and actually informed them that this is what we're going to do. It's difficult, but we had to let them know that why we are doing it is because we had some challenges back home, and we needed some time to sort out the relationship between me and my wife. Obviously, they understood, but you can see the tinge of sadness written all over their faces. That's a painful sight to see. So months passed. Our relationship didn't seem to get much better because there was not much time for each other, because when they came back from this center, they were all physically drained, my wife and the children. Add on to it, the little girl, she's all by herself at home with my mom, looking forward, waiting for the mother and the siblings to come home. This truly aches my heart. Seeing the family dynamics slowly disintegrating. We cry out to God in our brokenness. And thankfully, we do have a Father who cares, understands, and most importantly, answers prayers. And God is in control of all this. A broken and contrite heart, He will not despise. And in the midst of all this, I was also searching out for some homeschool program where, it's probably one that got to fit the need of my family. I thank God for His direction, and He actually directed me to one that is quite close, because we were basically focusing on the Bible and character building. We regrouped as a family to inform them of our decision this time, to actually bring them home to restart our homeschool. It's about a year exactly. And you could see the smiles on the children's faces. And we took it as God's confirmation that indeed this is the way forward. Looking back, 3 years now, not only the relationship between me and my wife has improved tremendously due to the time spent together, engaging, communicating with each other, being very transparent and open. We also had so much laughter these last 3 years. Enjoy at home. Family time came back. Short outings, because of the homeschool, we had the flexibility. And the family structure started and slowly and surely taking shape. And we believe this is in accordance to what God has designed family to be. The years that the locusts have destroyed, God has helped to restore.
Amen.
And not only restore, in abundance. Moving forward, we know we have challenges ahead, but we trust God is with us. And I like this. You can't lose with God on your side.
Amen.
Or maybe we should say, we can't lose when we are on God's side.
Amen.
It must have been such a relief for you.
Oh, yes.
Thank
I
thank you
mean,
for sharing.
we enjoy having our children around, sending them to the center. I come back home, I say, this is not a home. A home should be filled with fun, a lot of noise and laughter. And me and my wife, we could see each other. The body, communication is not so much of words, the facial expression, the body. We could sense the pain in each other's heart. And that's why we actually decided, let's do it and trust it to God.
Thank you for sharing that with us. That was really good. Yeah, and I could see that how it pained you when you had to send the children off to the center.
Oh, yes.
So yeah, so glad that it all turned out well.
Amen.
Now we all need boundaries for children, right? Without boundaries, it's like there is no limit. Everything can just, they can do whatever they like. So now with 8 children, Dr. Ben, how do you and Jaya manage to keep your children within the boundaries while still not being less affectionate with them? What would be your advice to parents who find it a challenge to keep their children within boundaries?
And of course, the first thing again as we mentioned earlier, it depends on parenting styles. So my wife always tells me I'm a little bit too laid back, relaxed, and I let children seem to be, to be free, and I should be much more stricter. But we are reminded in Proverbs, train a child in the way he should go. In the NIV, it says, start children in the way it should go. Now, this is my dad and mom, when we were young, obviously trained us in the Christian ways. We walked, we went to church. Then eventually, when we went overseas, one of the important factors that really matters and which we need to remember in principle is that once they're released, once they go out from the home, then what they do in the outside world should be what they've already trained, and that's important. We need to remember that, for a coach of an athlete, a football team, the coach cannot be on the field. It's a person he has trained, and that's it. It's all about training. There's a second premise that I have, that God is the ultimate parent. And for God, Israel was a child, but Israel was a very bad child. God tried his level best to keep them under control, but it didn't work. So, when you're struggling and you think you are doing badly as a parent, just think that God himself also struggled with Israel. There's the third thing that we need to remember, and this is actually a story from James Dobson, when he talked about a a school that was actually in the middle of a field with a drain all around it and a fence. And these are young children. So they actually did an experiment. Children ran all the way up to the fence, the boundary, without problems. That shows how good boundaries are. They did the experiment to take off the fence, and surprisingly, the children wouldn't dare go. I mean, some children do, those who are risk takers, the others would happily stay back. So boundaries have effect of telling you how far you should go. Now, let me give another example. Little children, when they want, little toddlers, when they're going and they want to see how far they can stretch the limit, they look at the parent and see, yes. They want to know when the limit has been reached. So we also learn to test boundaries. And unfortunately, as adults, we also do that, not just children. So how does God the Father deal with us sinful people, or even adults and children? The answer is obviously train the child, so that when we are older, at any age, when we leave our home, when we go from our place of work and to go somewhere else, those boundaries are important. And we are reminded in Philippians that as part of our salvation, we are told that we need to work out our salvation. Salvation is not magical. You need to put the boundaries up so that you know when you have set your boundaries in, of course, consultation with God, the Holy Spirit, listening to the Holy Spirit talking to you, your conscience. These are boundaries that you set. I mean, you set the boundaries. You know your limits. So it's important that to remember that we need boundaries. Now, as parents, we always need to have those boundaries. Those boundaries are there sometimes as strict limits. Sometimes children may actually make a mistake and step over the boundary, and what happens? And that is where we come in as parents. As God himself always accepted his children to come back when they're repentant with their mistakes, or even when they can't even say sorry, God received them. Our job is to receive them back. If we don't, then our children will go to an alternative person or escape route, and they, unfortunately, maybe the alternative is not a God-given source of comfort or re-establishing themselves.
Right.
So it is very important as we have boundaries. Boundaries are the limits. Boundaries may be exceeded. If they make mistakes, we need to be able to love them, take them back, and we need to do what God himself does. God actually is strict, but actually we all need to remember as adults, sometimes we are over strict with our children, and we forget that God actually loves us so much that that if we sin, we make mistakes, he receives us back. Then that's how we've done that with our boundaries, especially when our children are all over the globe.
Yeah. So a good point from what you have said is that when they do exceed the boundaries, when they do go beyond, to take them back, to love them.
Yes.
Because we don't want them to go to alternative people who are not good for them, yeah?
Correct. Those who cannot be a source of comfort, those who cannot actually repair the damage, those who cannot actually bring them back to their faith in God. Those are important points.
Yeah. Okay, we have heard from Dr. Ben on, as a parent, laying boundaries for the children. Sarah, maybe you would like to share with us what it's like as a child. How have you seen the boundaries set for you play a part in nurturing affection? Would you say that affection and restriction are exclusive of each other?
Well, I think not. I don't think they're exclusive. I think, restriction is out of affection, if you were to put it that way. I would say that, growing up, my parents did a lot of boundaries for us, and as a child, it's easier to follow these things. A very simple example would be, because both my parents are pastors, and so they meet people a lot, and we get invited to their other people's homes a lot. And before we leave the car, they often bring us along. So before we leave the car, they would lay down the rules, what you should do when you meet uncles. Say hello, say, introduce yourself. When you get something, say thank you. If you need something, say please. You're not allowed to run around with all the other children. You have to sit in your chair and be, kind of like be polite. When they ask you a question, answer. Don't just keep quiet, that kind of things. So they kind of lay down the rules before we leave the car. And then so we go for this dinner. And as children, we behaved ourselves very well. And when we come back into the car, my parents would say, "I'm very pleased with you," And I think when that happened, it's sort of something clicked in our head that if you follow these rules, then my parents would be pleased with me. And so every time that happened, when we come back into the car, then my sister and I would ask, Mommy, are you pleased with me? You know, are you pleased with me? And they would say, yes, I'm very pleased with you. But as you grow older, you know, whether or not what you do pleases your parents, you don't care so much anymore. What you do is more like what I want to do. It doesn't matter what mom and dad thinks. And me as a teenager or going into adulthood, I think it really didn't matter to me what my parents thought. And every boundary that they put in front of me, I felt challenged to kick them out because I wanted to know the world for myself. And I think the thing is, when parents make boundaries, it's like they really want to do it out of protection and love for you. They really want to guide you and shield you from things that they don't want you to experience. But sometimes unfortunately, we have to experience them in order to know that those boundaries came from a place of love. And like, Dr. Ben said that, when your parents are the type that are willing, despite the mistake that you made, and to love you anyway, then it really doesn't matter what happens. You have something to fall back. And it's really important to know that your parents will always be there for you no matter what. When I was in pre-U, I think I was in Ipoh for about a year, living away from my parents, and I lived in like a hostel. And so we had a rule in the hostel where we had to come before 7. So everybody has to be in that hostel before 7. I, of course, went on an excursion with my friends to the riverside for a barbecue, and we all came back at 3 in the morning. It's like my parents not here, I can do what I want, And so in the morning, and then we got reported to the disciplinary board in where I was studying. And unbeknown to me, they were going to write a letter to my parents to inform them of what I'd done. And obviously I was, kind of freaking out. And I was expecting my parents to really come hard on me because, we don't come back late at home, that's not a practice. So why would you kind of do it when you're out of the home, right? It doesn't make sense. But instead of my dad scolding me, he actually called me and said, "Are you okay? Will this have any, repercussions on your, being able to take your exams and things like that?" I said no. And I actually had to go through a disciplinary board process in my pre-U, in my college. And there was going to be a date where we came before the disciplinary board and had to explain our actions. My dad actually traveled all the way together with my mom from KL to Ipoh to be there with me while I go through this whole thing. He wasn't in the room with me, but when I came out, they were there to kind of support me. They did not say, "Why did you do this? This is your own doing." No, they instead bought me a bucket of KFC to make sure that I was emotionally okay, that everything went fine. And I came out of the meeting and I had a lot of things to complain about, but they were there for me. And that for me was a point in my life where I really knew that my parents loved me, despite the fact that I was a naughty child. And that gave me the assurance that no matter what happens in life, they would always be there for me. And I think that is so important. And I began to know why they set certain boundaries, because, there are things that sometimes in life you just have to follow. And there are things sometimes that will hurt you. But if the boundaries were not set in the beginning, I would be completely lost. I wouldn't know what to do with myself. I wouldn't know right from wrong. And so in hindsight, I'm so thankful that they actually set those boundaries, because I always tell my parents, everything that I am today, every good thing about me, it came from you. It really, really did come from them. Yeah.
Oh, that was so sweet of your parents. So when they came and they brought you KFC and they asked how you were, how did you feel? You had just tested your boundaries. You had just broken some rules. How did you feel when they did that to you?
I was very overwhelmed, to be honest, because my parents growing up were very strict, so strict that one time after being scolded, I actually went to my mom and said, "Mom, do you love me?" So coming from a family that is very strict, I did not expect that response. I really expected them to, really come down hard on me. But I think it was really the wisdom of God to really to know how to tackle the situation, to know that I'm not a child anymore, that you can discipline in a certain way and we would kind of, not do it again. But I was now a teenager, and love is so important. And I feel that when you accept in love, instead of coming down hard sometimes, it does so much more to teach a child rather than, if you were to get a bad response. So I was really very overwhelmed, and I think I cried a little bit thinking about it, why my dad would do such a thing, why my parents would, they didn't have to come weekend. They really didn't have to. They could have called me over the phone and say, how did it go? You deserve this. But they didn't, and that for me, really stuck. And it really, really made such an impression. I was like, wow, my parents really love me.
Yeah, wow.
And
I have learned something. Yeah, Dr. Ben?
I was going to say that's exactly what boundaries are. When you've done something wrong, things are going bad, you feel horrible. What you really want most? A hug from your parents. Makes a whole difference. The same that when we go to God, we want God to actually show His love to us in that real downtime. We need something special, not a lecture.
Yeah. So I think, although as parents, when you know that your child has done something wrong, the first thing you want to do is to just ask them, why did you do it? Why did you not listen? Why did you disobey and all that? So to calm down and to do take the other direction and show them love and all that.
Exactly.
That is something you need a lot of grace for that. I would need a lot of grace to do that.
Exactly.
But good lesson, good lesson. Thanks, Sarah. So we have to hear it from a young adult.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, thanks for sharing that as well. That was really very good. Now, earlier I mentioned that we grew up in a culture where the show of affection was a no, right? It's like, oh, you cannot hold hands. You can't hold hands with your boyfriends in front of your parents. That is too sinful. You don't know how to behave yourself, control yourself, and all that. But so how do you believe that relationship between parents can affect children, CB? How have you seen this come through in your family, where the parents show affection? How does it affect your children?
Okay, definitely, this is for sure. See, during the crisis time that we went through, people say children, they are God's spy. God sent them to us to ensure that we toe our line. I believe that. I believe that. Is it during the crisis time when the relationship between me and my wife, they were quite strained. The poor kids, they could sense it, they could smell it, just by looking at our facial expression. They say we better toe our line. The tension, the atmosphere around the house is not too good. And fast forward 3 years after we have worked through our relationship, we could see big change and transformation in the way they relate to one another, the siblings, because they observe and they saw us in our difficult times and how God actually restored our relationship through a lot of engagement, open conversation, and they in fact now can, in our presence, they can they can feel very relaxed. They can just be themselves, and we also give them the permission to tell us when we have actually gone a bit hard on them. And we can see that the whole atmosphere in the house is so different now, and we can see the way they deal with one another. Basically, for us parents, we need to be the role model and exemplify whatever we want to teach our children. I always believe and subscribe to this notion. Yeah? Emotionally healthy parents will raise emotionally healthy children. The greatest gift we parents can give to our children is in the way we profess our love for one another. They catch it better than we preach it to them.
Yeah, and I think children are very happy when they see their parents happy.
Oh yes.
Yeah, when they see that.
Can I just share one more thing here? This about the public show of affection. This is my wife's gift to my children and to myself. I come from a conservative home, like what you mentioned earlier, Dorinda. My parents don't hug in front of us. They don't even hold their hands in front of us. Not to mention hugging us. I don't remember my dad and mom hug me. I only remember my mom hugged me once when I was crying. That was about the only time. But my wife, she's very spontaneous. She surprised me. She surprised everybody. She just come right behind me, whoop, and a peck on her cheek. Initially, my children, they were also quite, that's not, wow. that wasn't like that before. And because of that, it transmits to the children. And I have 4 boys and 2 girls. I have got 4 huggies and 2 kisses. They will just come up to me because mommy is so open and in expressing herself. Daddy, every day I have minimum 4 to 5 hugs and few kisses on my cheek, even up to today. My eldest daughter, when I have visitor with me, my brother's coming to visit my home, she's already 17 and she has no qualms. Just come and sit on my lap and wanted me to just hold my hands to hug her. I mean, this is wonderful.
Yeah, that's right. So it's all because the parents are open to display their affection for one another. Yeah, and that's very interesting because we have a question from a viewer. Can we have the question out, please? It is, this viewer is asking, how do we show affection if we're not from a family that usually hugs or kisses and says, I love you? So what are the ways that we can show affection? Maybe Sarah would like to share with us first.
I think there is only one way, is to actually do it. If you know that you are the type to not do it, then we need to take the effort to try to do it. When I was in university, we actually did a social experiment, and it was about, telling each other how you feel before it's too late. So we kind of set up a situation where we got parents and children, and we told the parents, give you a situation, let's say your child died. What would you say to them, at their funeral? And then we recorded what the parents had to say, and the parents said all the nice things they had to say to their children, and then after that, we played that video for the child and then saw their reaction together. And it was very beautiful to see how suddenly, they are crying and they are hugging. And in one of the videos, or one of the families that we captured, the father actually turned to the daughter and said, hey, we never say this to each other before. First time, huh? And that kind of thing. Why we never say this before? And it's true, because so many people, it doesn't really come to mind to do it, because I think a lot, especially in Asian families, we love by doing. So, a mom cooks for us. That is her expression of love. A dad goes to work and earns for the family. That is his expression of love. But sometimes in the family, a little bit more is required, where we actually say, I love you, or we actually give a hug. It may not come natural to us, but I feel that if we know that we are that way, and we actually take steps to change that, that's when love, you really see something in your family just come alive, because suddenly the love is felt in a way that has never been felt before. And I think that will really change your family, and you'll see your children respond differently too.
Yeah, so you're saying that even if you're not that type, you're not the huggy type, you're not the kissy type, but you just have to learn to do it.
Yes, that's right. Because even in marriage relationships, for example, my parents, my dad is not a touchy person. My dad, if he can be by himself, with nobody around, he would love it. But my mom, however, is a person who loves by touch, and they would sit on the sofa. My dad would naturally sit at the other end of the sofa. And my mom would be like, why is it so far from me? But knowing that, my dad would now intentionally sit next to my mom, hold her hand, because that is how she feels love, even though it is not natural to him, you know. And I think that when we are aware, the best thing is, the first step is being aware. And it's good that, you know, Anthony, you posed this question, that you are aware. And now that we are aware, what do we do about it? It's to really step out of our comfort zone, beyond what we are normally like, and do what the other person needs in order to receive love.
Okay, so it is very intentional.
Yes,
Yeah.
I think to add to that, it really depends exactly on parent styles. It's important. And so, like, my dad has always been huggy, hand holding, and today, you know, man holding man is a taboo. That's a big problem for us. And yet, those were the things that were common. So it was even common for friends in India, for instance, male friends to hold hands. It was such an acceptable thing. Hugging is another one of those things where you are touchy. So some people see this, they see this in a family, which is very acceptable, and they come into the family and they go, not nice. It's not what we do in our family. It looks a bit odd, queer, you know. So that becomes a problem. We need to cross that barrier and understand we have different family styles, and we bring a little bit of our baggages from our own styles across. And so, of course, we need to transcend it when we begin to understand it is a language of love, isn't it? Because touch is a language of love, speech is another language of love, gifts is another language of love. So we need to know that hugs, kisses, touch, sometimes actually it's part of the way the family communicates.
Yeah.
And just to add on to that, fun and humor, like playing board games, watching a movie together with them, just being with them, and spending times like this actually can really enhance the relationship. Yeah, I mean, there are many ways. If we are not the huggy or kissy type, I'm learning. Like Sarah said, intentionally be aware and adapt, growth mindset.
Yeah.
And if you really still cannot, I think it's not difficult to play some games with your children. But children, when you play with them, especially the younger ones, they relate that as love from the parents. Yeah.
I think
And also-
children. Sorry.
So I was going to add to that also. So sometimes, like as a doctor, I'm very busy and I'm involved in different organizations. So sometimes you do have meetings, conversations, or sometimes you just have to catch up with work at home. We don't have like the Americans do. The dad disappears into the den to do all his work, and nobody else gets in. We are actually more exposed. But then you begin to realize that as long as you're in the home, somewhere in the vicinity of the children, they consider that as family time. I mean, they don't want to be disturbed. At the same time, they want to know that you're there. So it becomes, so in case they need to run to you for anything. So I think now that we have the MCO, the RMCO, the TENCO, whichever MCO, parents having to work at home, children having to come and appear in the screen while you're working, it has suddenly changed the dilemma of working at home, flexi time. So it has changed so much in the perspective that children now become more accommodated to the environment of working. So children appreciate the fact that you are around, and that makes a difference.
Yeah. And also, I think children enjoy it when they see us letting our hair down, because they always see us as the disciplinarian, the people who lay the boundaries, so serious, make sure everything is carried on as directed. But when we let our hair down, sometimes we play games with them and we do crazy things with them, I think they just see the other side of us, and that's really important, I think, right?
Yes.
The part that's not so perfect.
Yes, it should. But then sometimes they fall back in shock and saying, "Is that really what you do?" And as Asians, we have that problem that we appear to be more strict than we have to be, unlike the West. I still remember once we went on holiday walking up I think it was in Fraser's or Cameron's, and a child of a Western missionary was walking on the ledge, and down the opposite side was a steep fall. As an Asian, we go run around, "No, you can't do this," and you turn around to them, and they don't seem to have any care. They will learn. What? Learn from falling down from the ledge? No logic. But, yeah, so they make discoveries. And of course, we've seen the Western people have gone to the moon and places the Asians haven't gone far yet.
It's true. I think we Asian parents tend to be more protective over our children. It is so hard to see them learn from their mistakes, right? I mean, to see them fall. So we try and avoid the fall.
Yes.
Stop that fall. We
As
will
a child, we appreciate it.
no, appreciate what? The fall or the protection?
Appreciate the protection, or
Protection.
rather the attempt of protection.
The safe boundary.
The safe boundary, that's right.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that was really good. My next, do we have any more questions? Okay, and what is the next question, please? Can we have the next question, please? What are some ways the family can spend quality time together? All right, so maybe all our panelists can share a little bit on this.
I think as CBS mentioned, actually one of the key factors I think which we say is that when you ask children what is it they remember of families and family time, it's surprising. It is the holidays. It's the time spent away. Maybe one good reason is, when you're at home, you're still busy. It doesn't matter how. I mean, for me as a doctor, when I'm busy, I get calls. When I'm not on call, I still get a call or a patient. So it becomes a problem. The only time you can extricate yourself from the system is to go on a holiday, especially when you're overseas. But I still remember when we were young as well, the same thing. The holidays were the ones that you strikingly remember of parenting. And I think that we tend to see the good side of the parents more than the strict disciplinarian, the side of parenting. So it's important. Then, of course, there are a lot of other things we do. Have meal times together, watch television whenever we can. Yeah.
I think just picking off what Dr. Ben said about holidays, one thing that holidays I find, I mean, my family, like I mentioned, we're very close-knit. And so we actually had this practice of eating meals together every day. But it is on holidays that you create memories that are different from your daily life. Now that, we recently had a holiday last year, and there was this resort in Port Dickson that was on discount. So my parents actually managed to get one of those hotels that had like a mini pool in the room. And my husband and I actually drove up for a day to spend time with them during that holiday. And I found myself in the pool on my mom's shoulders. My mom is in her 50s, by the way, and I'm in my late 20s. I was there on my mom's shoulders in the pool, racing to the other end of the pool with my siblings, and I had never done that in my life, but it was on that holiday that we are able to experience each other in very different ways and also create new memories together, keep creating new memories that are out of the mundane daily life things that we do. And that is when you realize that you actually don't take each other for granted, or you can't take each other for granted because you're reminded of all these beautiful moments that you share and create together. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think our children today, they remember experiences more than the things that you buy for them.
Correct.
Right, that is more precious to them.
The memories you create.
Yeah, and parents are more relaxed when they're on holiday also, just like the children, So,
Hopefully.
You're not thinking of your patients while you're on holiday. Don't. Okay, we have another question. Can we put it up, please? Okay. Western people seem more expressive than Asians. Does it mean they are more affectionate? That's a very interesting question. Who would like to answer first?
I'll say that I do not think that they are more affectionate. I think that Asians just have a different way of expressing. I think culturally, it's very important whenever we see a context of anything is to see what our culture is like. And in the Asian culture, like I mentioned, it's a lot of doing. They do things for you. But sometimes as children, we can't really see it, right? Because it seems to be the natural thing to do. Of course, you would take care of me. I'm your child, that kind of thing. But it doesn't mean that your parents are any less affectionate to you. I know that there are a lot of, I've had, growing up, sometimes my friends' moms would come and ask me, can you please take care of my daughter when you go to school? Just make sure she don't do anything naughty. Actually, that is out of love. But the daughter has no idea that the mom actually came to me and said, can you please take care of my daughter? You know? And to the girl, she'll be like, my mom doesn't care about me, lah. She just dropped me off to school, then she go off, and then after that, I come home, the food is on the table. You know, she don't even eat with me. But the fact that the mom actually prepared the food, put it on the table, left it for you to eat, you know, that kind of thing, culturally, is just like that. I mean, of course, we can do so much more in trying to be more visible in terms of affection, to make people know that they do love you. But I think culturally, it does not mean that we are any less, or that parents are any less affectionate to their kids. I do not believe that.
Yeah,
I think to add to that, I think we do need to remember, I think the Asian concern for children probably lasts longer than the Westerners. So we do look into children's education, going beyond, probably a bit too much into who they marry and when they're going to have their children. You know, it doesn't seem to stretch on for a long time. Whereas Westerners at some point will say, okay, well, now you're mature, you're on your own, off you go. And that's very common amongst the Westerners. Quite rare. I had a friend who actually had that. He went to his dad and asked for advice. The dad said, you're an adult now. You should be able to think for yourself. And he was Indian, you know. So it's very unusual that we don't involve ourselves. Westerners tend to release and let them go at a much younger age, probably a little bit too soon, that before they've actually formed all those established boundaries.
Just to add on a bit to the expressive side of the Westerners over the Asians, I believe it's more of the way they are being educated. The Asian way of education and the Westerners. Because I used to work for American companies, I have colleagues coming over, and I myself join them, especially in the meetings. And the Asians are, you know, as usual, they will be very quiet when questions are asked. When the Westerners, they have no qualms expressing themselves. It all boils down to, I think, the education system that they're exposed to. The way they're being taught in their school is, you know, you have something to say, you say it out. Yeah. But Asians, you have something, just like our Asian context is, children, you have to be seen, not to be heard.
Seen, not heard.
So that is a very
perennial problem.
very bad thing. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, I think they are more expressive, whereas we keep our feelings to ourselves. Yeah. All right, that was a really interesting session, and we have heard so much from our panelists, their experiences, and we really appreciate that you're open about your personal experiences. That was really very good, an eye-opener for me, I know, and I'm sure for our viewers as well. Right, so I wish we had more time, but time is running out, so we have to, that was our last question. But from what I've heard from our panelists, the words I keep hearing are to be present, meal times together, laughter, activities, respecting each other's space, loving your spouse, showing affection and openness. Now, nurturing affection in families is a conscious, intentional, and ongoing effort. It has to be cultivated as our children grow with no shortcuts. So I hope you all have been able to take away with you some points that will help you as you endeavor to nurture affection in your own families. I'd like to thank our panelists for their time, for their sharing of the experiences and the tips that they have given us. Thank you very much. We appreciate what you have shared with us. Thank you. I would also like to thank our viewers for joining us today. I hope you have enjoyed yourselves and you have learned something that has been helpful to you. Right, Family Heart Talk is held every second and fourth Sunday of the month. Our next topic, navigating through the pain of grief and loss, will be held on Sunday, 13th of September. So if you know of anyone who would benefit from such a talk, please share this with them and invite them to join us on the 13th of September at 4 o'clock. All right. So do look out for updates on our Facebook and Instagram pages. And if you have enjoyed the talks, don't forget to like us. All right. Bye, everybody, and thank you.
Bye.
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 Thank you. Thank you.